All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this year's second Tennessee Sustainable Spirits webinar entitled Wastewater Management for Spirits Producers. This webinar is being put on by the Tennessee Sustainable Spirits Program in collaboration with TDEC's Division of Water Resources. My name is Caleb Powell, and I'm an environmental scientist for the Office of Sustainable Practices at TDEC, and I'll be hosting the webinar today for our wonderful guests. Everyone is muted upon entry to reduce the amount of background noise, but if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to ask those in the chat, and I'll work on getting those answered to our speakers. And we really do hope that there are questions or comments. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of having a live webinar, is being able to start that discussion, bring about questions, and then even if anybody in the audience has comments that could help the discussion or you know, further the information. I think that's one of the greatest things about having an actual live presentation. So I'm actually sending a chat currently to everyone. You should see that on the right hand of your screen. If you can't see that, there's a little drop down of the chat where you can see that, and I just sent a chat to all of you in the audience. And so whenever you're sending a comment or you have a question, make sure that in that drop down box right next to send to, that the word all is a part of it, or the word host. So all participants, all panelists, all attendees, or the word host, so that I will see that question and I can make sure that our speakers get that question or that comment asked or told to them, and we can make sure that it's seen. So just to give an overview of what's going to be covered today, in this webinar, attendees are going to be learning about wastewater in the spirits industry. Jordan is going to be discussing how wastewater treatment plants work, spirit producers, waste constituents, potential impacts, chemical storage, and communication with wastewater treatment plants. So before we get into that, I'm going to pass it on over to Mark Valencia. He is the mind behind the Tennessee Sustainable Spirits Program. He's an environmental scientist for TDEC's Office of Sustainable Practices and the program manager for our, like I said, the Tennessee Sustainable Spirits Program. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on over to you, Mark. Might be muted.
Awesome. I think you can hear me now.
Yep.
Great. I appreciate everyone joining us for the Tennessee Sustainable Spirits webinar number 2. This is the second webinar of 2 webinars we do every single year for the Sustainable Spirits program. Once again, I'm Mark Valencia. I'm an environmental scientist with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, Office of Sustainable Practices. I oversee the Sustainable Spirits program within TDEC. Just a quick little overview of sustainable practices. We are divided into several different sections within our office. So we cover community work, state government institutions. That's our back of house work, some of the stuff we work behind the scenes to make a more sustainable government. And then we have the business team, which is where the Sustainable Spirits program lies. With that, you know, this is our organization where we work with small and large businesses who are interested in going above and beyond environmental sustainability. The Tennessee Sustainable Spirits Program is a voluntary program to assist wineries and wine growers, breweries, and distilleries in increasing sustainability by promoting best practices, providing technical assistance, and developing relationships. So our Sustainable Spirits Program is designed to work with any brewery, winery, or distillery within the state of Tennessee who want to go above and beyond environmental regulatory controls. So these are the organizations who want to go above and beyond just the minimum that's required by state government. Benefits of becoming a member of the Sustainable Spirits Program: we have unique branding, so our members have full access to that logo you see on the right. We give, you know, promotional material using those logos, and they have free use of that particular logo to advertise and show their customers that they are recognized by the state of Tennessee as a sustainable spirits producer. With that unique branding, we also feature all our members on our webpage, and we have an interactive map to show where all our members are and what they got going on, sustainably speaking. We, from time to time, do articles on our members and share some of the great practices that they're doing. Every year we have a new member recognition event and workshop. So that will be coming out next month at Nelson's Greenbrier. And this is where we'll have a workshop to learn more about sustainable spirits and sustainability within the spirits industry. And we'll recognize all our new members to the program. We also have a vast amount of resources on our webpage covering sustainability, water management, value stream mapping. There's a ton of resources on our webpage, so I encourage anyone to take a look at it if they're interested about pursuing any sustainable practices associated within the spirits industry and even broadly. So this can branch out to any small business or large organization. Here's some of the promotional material that we give out to our members. So on the bottom right, you see there, that's actually a coaster made of recycled tire rubbers. So another program we have within the Office of Sustainable Practices is our Tire Environmental Act program, where we give out grant money to find beneficial use for used tires and research within that organization. So if you're looking to start a business using recycled tires, reach out to us. We might have some grant money for y'all. In the middle, that's a window clean. Any organization who's a member of the Sustainable Spirits program can proudly display this on their storefront and let patrons know that they're a Sustainable Spirits member. Bottom left is pretty unique as well. It's a bottle hanger, so you hang that particular material on your bottle to advertise your sustainable spirit. But the unique thing about those, the paper is embedded with native plants or herbs, and so when you're done using that actual bottle hanger, you can actually put it in your garden and grow, wildflowers or herbs. Membership can be attained by fulfilling a range of different items. It covers water, air, community involvement, and materials management. So the overall goal for this program, again, is to go above and beyond environmental regulatory requirements. And this is encouraging our producers to go beyond that by reducing air, water pollution, community involvement, any way to improve sustainability within their organization. Application process, you fill out a simple application. It's a one-page application just giving you general information on who you are and what you got going on. In addition to that, we require you to provide last year's utility data and production data, because we use that data to show you, when it comes to water, a good example is that, it may take you 5 gallons of water to produce a gallon of beer, or this many kilowatt hours to produce this much product. And we normalize that data to show you, to establish a baseline to see where you are with your utility consumption. It's a great way to look at your overhead, and it's also a great way for us to see how you are impacting the community around you with the amount of utilities you're consuming. This data is crucially helpful for you to establish a baseline, and we can actually compare it to other producers within your field. So we can compare it to national and international data averages and show where you stand amongst your peers. In addition to your utility data, we require a checklist. So there's a checklist that covers 54 items on there, ranging from air, water, recycling. This checklist, you have to meet a minimum of 25 of the items listed of the 50+ items listed on the checklist. If you meet that minimum of 25, you submit your utility data and your application. That is required for us to get the ball rolling on this. From there, we'll review the application, your data, and your checklist, and we might reach out for some additional questions. Upon receiving all that information, we'll do a TDEC internal compliance check to make sure you are doing what you're supposed to be doing within the regulatory realm of TDEC. From there, we will reach out to y'all to do a site visit. This site visit is mainly to go over that checklist, to verify what you got listed, and most of the time we can find additional items that we can check off on your checklist. And if you think you're at the cusp of not reaching that 25 minimum, with some simple changes in your process, I think we can get you to that 25. So I think the site visit is a great way to verify all that information and identify areas of opportunity. So if we see any areas of opportunity, we can make recommendations for you. So once we take all that data, we do the site visit, we take some notes, we will get back to you with the sustainability report, in which we welcome you into the program, your acceptance into the program. That sustainability report will cover everything from your data, that checklist, and lists of recommendations. And again, these are only recommendations. You're more than welcome to pursue any of them. You don't have to pursue any of them. But if you'd like to pursue any of the recommendations we make, we can provide some of that high-level technical assistance to help you figure out what you need to do to achieve those recommendations. The checklist has 4 pages, so these are the first 2 pages. I'm just trying to use this as an example to show everyone some of the items we cover in the checklist, you know, from water, air, waste. The next section is energy, sourcing materials, sourcing ingredients, community involvement, and maintenance. So there's a wide range of information on how we can get you to meet that minimum of 25. All these materials are listed on our webpage. If you ever want to look for them or find the application or the checklist, you're more than welcome to go to our webpage. We can send out a link later to where you can find all this information. Some of the next steps we're looking to do with our Sustainable Spirits program, of course, is always increasing membership. We always want to get feedback from our members and stakeholders. We want to make sure this program is designed specifically for our members and stakeholders and is an added benefit to them and their organization. So again, this program is designed specifically for our members, and their input is critically important to the program. We're always looking for additional resources to add to our webpage and provide additional added benefit by having additional resources for our members. A good example of one of the new items we added to the program is value stream mapping. So we have guidelines on how you can develop your own program and conduct a value stream mapping survey of your organization and your processes. I'll have a quick overhead example of that, a high-level overview of that in the next slide. Currently, we're working on developing guidelines for submetering, so we're encouraging organizations to really dial down to identify some of their large utility consumption processes. So adding a submeter helps you really separate where your consumption is coming from. So say you're running gas, you can identify which areas of your processes are consuming the most gas, and that can help you determine what may be your next step in improving your sustainability and maybe reducing some of your utility consumption. Every summer we have a summer internship. We partner closely with MTSU's Fermentation Science program. So if you're ever interested in wanting to become an intern with us, feel free to reach out to us and we can get that process going and discuss potential opportunities for internships. Now again, I discussed value stream mapping, so we have a quick little example I'm going to go over is value stream mapping. This is looking at from every process. So a good example, this is for beer production. So going from grain to almost your fermenter. You don't see the fermenter at the end. That's kind of this overview that we're looking at. So a good example is when you get your grain delivered, it has to get into storage somehow. So maybe if you're a large organization, you have a silo. How do you get that grain from the silo? There's some kind of electric motor pushing that grain into the silo. So we know the information that's provided on that particular electric motor that you're using. Based on the information on the electric motor and the amount of time that it takes to empty that truck and get into your silo, we can really dial down and determine exactly how much energy it takes for that particular process. So we can go across the entire process of your production and look at your ins and outs. So the electricity required to do a particular process, maybe the gas is required to heat up, your work for boiling, things like that. So we're looking at, water in, electricity in, gas in. So it's a great way to really identify areas of opportunity and maybe what are some of the highest taxing processes that you have. So it's a great way to really identify where you can improve your sustainability. So that's just a quick overview of the Sustainable Spirits program. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I want to discuss, what we're here for to learn more about wastewater and how it applies to sustainable spirits producers. So I have the great opportunity to introduce Jordan with the Division of Water Resources within TDEC. So Jordan graduated from MTSU with a Bachelor's of Science in Physics. After graduating, he worked for a few years for a lab equipment calibration company before joining TDEC as a wastewater industrial pretreatment inspector. After 8 years as a regulator, he now works at the Fleming Training Center, providing technical assistance for wastewater operators working to reduce nitrogen and phosphorus discharges. So I'd like to welcome you all and welcome Jordan to the program.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Let me see if I can my video on here. Glad to be here and speaking with you all today. We are. As Mark said, my name is Jordan Fay. I work with the Division of Water Resources. We have a training center in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where we primarily teach our wastewater and drinking water operators, but we've got a number of other training programs there as well, and that is run by the Division of Water Resources. So I'm going to skip this slide here because that kind of repeats everything he said. And today I want to talk with you all about wastewater. So what I'm not going to do is tell you how to manage your wastewater because that's going to look different for every facility. If you have a one-barrel brew house in the middle of Nashville, Tennessee, how you need to manage your waste is going to look very different than if you've got a 40-barrel brew house in Pikeville or something. So what I'd like to do is give you all a better understanding of how sewage treatment plants work and what some of the constituents of brewery and spirit producing operations are, so that when you are considering how how your process works, changes to your processes, you have a better understanding of what your impact can be on sewage treatment plants. Because ultimately that's going to impact the local rivers and streams. I mean, the sewage treatment plants don't just make it go away, right? They treat it and then they discharge that cleaned water back into the streams and rivers in our environment. So this is kind of an overview. This is the Nashville Dry Creek Sewage Treatment Plant. It's actually the smallest of their three. It processes about 20 million gallons a day. And it's kind of what I would consider a prototypical sewage treatment plant. It's got kind of all the basics that we would see. Sewage treatment plants are, in a lot of ways, the operating philosophy is not unlike brewing or distilling. It's bug farming, right? We're making a house for microbes to do the job that we want them to do. We feed them the right food. We give them, hopefully, the right environment to do their work. And then, like a sourdough starter, we remove the excess to give the rest of it room to grow and continue doing that work. Primarily, this is soil bacteria or bacteria that's already in the waste that it's receiving that's doing all that work. And it's breaking everything down into more innocuous material before being discharged back into the environment. So kind of a step-by-step. First, we have what we call primary clarifiers. So on the left, you have an empty one, and on the right is a full one. This is going to be removing a lot of the inorganic material, so plastics, rags, things that maybe shouldn't be flushed into the sewer. But it's also going to remove grease, anything that can float or settle. The larger organic materials are going to be removed here. Those flights across the top, they move slowly and they bring all the floatable stuff into a trough at one end, and similarly then they make the rounded on the bottom. They're scraping the bottom for anything that's settled, bringing that into a trough to be removed. So that's the first step, is those inorganic solids as well as our floatable and settleable solids. Next, we have really the heart of the treatment plant. We have our aeration basins. So on the right, you see an empty one, and there at the bottom are diffusers. So blowers, larger motors are pushing air through these to bubble up through the waste, and that's providing oxygen for our microbes to do their work. On the left, you see a full one. It's kind of a brown color. This is the biomass. This is all of the microbes doing their work here, consuming all of the stuff that we don't want in the waste, breaking it down to eventually be discharged here. And then at the end we have our secondary clarifiers. So an empty one on the left, full one on the right. Secondary clarifiers aren't really doing any treatment of the waste. This is where we pull that excess biomass out If there's some grease that made it through, it'll be collected at the top, some scum, things like that. But for the most part, really all we're doing here is allowing our microbes, just like the cone at the bottom of a fermenter, the yeast settles into so that you can pull it out and either dispose or reuse it. The secondary clarifier is going to be allowing all of that to settle, and it will similarly, they'll waste some portion of it and just get rid of that, and then some of it will be returned back through to continue treating. And the clear water at the top is sent on to disinfection, where it's going to be hit with chlorine or UV for the most part. There's a few less common disinfectants, but generally it's going to be chlorine, whether it's gas or mostly bleach, or UV disinfection. So that's really the short on how a wastewater plant works. I mean, again, we're providing a home for the biology to do the work for us. So what are we looking at in brewery or distillery waste? So one of the main components here, we may see solids, whether that's spent yeast or grains or hops. Those larger solids are going to be a pretty significant component of brewery and distillery waste. The second one here, biological oxygen demand. It's a little bit abstract. It's not a physical attribute of the waste. It's really kind of the potential for it to do something. But in the wastewater world, when we talk about biological oxygen demand, BOD, we're really referring to carbon food sources for that biomass. The reason we talk about it that way is if that water goes into the stream where microbes are going to, that are in the stream already, soil bacteria, surface water bacteria, they're going to consume that BOD, and they're going to consume the oxygen in the stream, as they metabolize, as they reproduce, consuming that carbon. They're going to deplete the oxygen in the stream, and potentially result in a fish kill. One of the big things that my current work is involved with comes from the Gulf Coast Hypoxia Task Force from the EPA. So there's a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico where there is no oxygen due to nutrients and BOD in the Mississippi River Basin, and all of that oxygen being depleted by the time it gets down there. So some of those sources in brewery and distillery waste are going to be sugars. Just like in your fermentation, your yeast are breaking down the sorry, not the yeast, but you're breaking down those complex sugars in the malt and in the grain into a more simple sugar for the yeast to later consume. Sugars are BOD. Ethanol itself is a source of BOD, and then any spent grains, yeast, hops, all of that is going to be a source of BOD in wastewater. pH is certainly something that's in distillery waste. It's not going to be just that pure water 7 pH, and that's going to come from your caustics, any cleaning acids you may have. Soaps tend to be above pH 7, and beer and spirits themselves are often a little more acidic, especially as you get into your sour beers. They're going to be more acidic. So pH can be something that we see in our wastewater. And temperature is not something that we often think about as a pollutant, but temperature can be something that we see in wastewater that can impact the sewer plant, whether that's from high temp cleaning waters, if you have boilers on site to produce your hot water, or to heat up your mash tuns and lauter tuns and all that. Boiler blowdown, even though it may be a low quantity, tends to be a high temperature. And if you've got off-spec product from your brew house that you don't send over to your fermenters, that can be high temperature as well. So let's talk a little bit about how these different things can impact our waste treatment system. So solids, obviously, you can have pipe blockages if you dump a lot of yeast or a lot of mash all at once. It can block pipes. It can clog up pumps. Pumps that weren't really designed to move solids. They were designed to move water, can be overloaded with these. So that can be a concern if you send too much all at once, or even there can be slow buildup over time. The biggest concern really, though, is going to be treatment interferences. Our wastewater treatment plants tend to operate best at a 6.5 to a 7.5 pH range. Really below 6.5, they just don't work. They just cannot treat the waste, and we're going to be sending, ammonia or other things straight out into the streams. So pH is definitely a concern. But you can actually experience BOD overload at a treatment plant. Remember, that's oxygen demand. So as you have that carbon food source, if you have a lot of it all at once that hits your plant, those microbes, they're going to see that food and they're going to eat it. They're going to reproduce. They're going to metabolize. They're going to consume all of the oxygen that's there, and they can actually eat themselves out of oxygen. And you end up with zero oxygen, and then treatment stops. The plant kind of goes, belly up. And it can actually take days or even weeks to reestablish treatment. And all that time, wastewater, our sewage is just going right through, not receiving the treatment that it's supposed to. But it's not all bad. BOD is actually needed for treatment, especially for more advanced treatment. Now, again, what my work is focusing on is removing nitrogen and phosphorus from our sewage. Doing that biologically rather than chemical addition. The microbes that do that work, that remove nitrogen and that remove phosphorus, they need a lot of BOD. It is a very carbon-heavy process. They need a ton of food to do what they're going to do. And so there are actually opportunities, especially for some of our smaller plants, to potentially work with our spirits producers to get BOD in the plant in order to drive that treatment. So, this may not be, getting in the front door, just in the pipes, in the collection system, flush down the drain kind of thing. There are some plants that have asked breweries to contain some of the higher BOD wastes and then, truck it to them and discharge it there directly at the plant to feed those processes. For a little bit of context, what we refer to as sanitary waste, so this is household waste, your toilets, your showers, your dishwashers, that kind of stuff. Textbook value for that is 250 milligrams per liter, so that's what we would expect from a normal home. Spirits producers tend to be on the order of 50,000 milligrams per liter, so we're talking, 2 orders of magnitude higher than typical sanitary waste. However, there are a lot of things going on in Tennessee. The sewage coming in the door at our sewage plants is often closer to 100 milligrams per liter, which is not quite enough to drive those nitrogen and phosphorus removal processes. So there are a lot of opportunities to work with brewers, distillers, with our sewer plants to increase the BOD coming in so that we can really drive those processes. The trick is just to not hit it all at once, with a big slug and bottom out that oxygen at our plants. So there's a lot of potential to work with sewer plants here to get what they need and to get what you all need in your waste discharges. So talking about chemical storage a little bit, here on the left we have a chemical storage area. It's good that it's locked off, only access to the people that need to access it. But there's a drain there. So you've got chemical totes, you've got jugs that are spray jugs that are tipped over. You've got a floor scrubber there that may leak or may have been dumped there. You've got totes on the right. If there are any leaks there, any spills, that's going in the drain, that's going straight to the sewer. Some of that in small quantity may not be a problem, but it might be. Some of that may actually be illegal to discharge to the sewer, as it may be considered a hazardous waste, depending on what the chemical is. On the right, we've got drums that are stored on secondary containment pallets. So you see there's kind of a grid on top. So if those drums get punctured or if they leak, if there's a spill as people are transferring out of them, that's going to go down into those containment pallets and be contained there. What you can't see from the room, and I'm just trying to keep it, not have pictures of industries necessarily, but the whole room is kind of containment. There are no floor drains. There's curbing around it so that if there's a big spill, if one of those storage totes empties out completely, it's not going to be running out and going into our sewer plants or going into storm drains. So be thinking about chemical storage. Obviously, you may have to have small quantities of working containers near your bottling lines, cleaners, that kind of stuff. But the storage or containment pallets can be a good solution so that you still have secondary containment without impacting your ability to transport and use those chemicals. So when talking about chemical storage, think about the potential for absorbent booms, absorbent eels, we may call them, socks, another name for them, containment pallets. Be thinking about how look around for drains. Be thinking about if this drum or this tote got a hole in it, where is that going to go? And we might think, well, running it down the drain is good because then it's not here to be dangerous, but that can pose a lot of its own dangers. So think about chemical storage there. And then really the most important thing is just communication with sewer plant staff. Don't think of them as waste cops, because really they're not. That's us. That's not me anymore, but that's TDEC. But don't think of them as that. They are, they're just trying to keep water clean, keep our rivers and streams clean and safe. That's their job. That's their goal. So, if you don't know the staff at your local sewer plant, if you don't know where your waste goes, that's really step one. Hopefully, someone from the sewer plant has contacted y'all at some point just to reach out. But I would encourage you all, and I encourage the operators to contact one another, have them come out, take a look through your operation, see if there are any opportunities to improve how you manage your waste. There may be things that you are sending out in a dump truck that you can send to the sewer plant. There may be things that you think are just fine to go down the drain that really are causing harm to the system. I encourage you all to reach out and take a tour of the production facility and see if there are any opportunities to improve how you manage your waste. Minor things from if you have an off-spec bright tank, run that down the drain slowly as opposed to just opening it wide open and dumping the whole 40,000 gallons or whatever it may be. There are probably some opportunities to improve how you manage your waste. Obviously, if you have any emergency or unusual events, if there's a chemical spill, of course, the first concern is going to be safety. That's always the first concern. But if any of it makes it to the sewer, the second consideration needs to be that, because that may be safety as well. There may be staff working in manholes down the line that you don't know about, and there's a slug of acid coming to them. They need to be aware of that. So I always recommend posting contact lists near chemical storage in particular. So if you have something like that, or you have a major off-spec product that you've got to dump, reach out to them, talk to them about how best to do that for the both of you, for the production facility as well as for the sewer system as a whole. Because at the end of the day, they're trying to protect the environment. That's their job. And so as members of the Sustainable Spirits program, I know that's a priority for all of y'all as well. So contacting them when any emergency or unusual events happen to discuss how best to manage that is always a good thing. So, you know, communication is key in all of this process. And that's really all I have. Like I said, I didn't want to tell you how to manage your waste because it's going to look very different whether you're a brewery or a distillery or, you know, you're making wine. That's going to look different if you're a small system that's in a big city or a big system in a small city. But hopefully now, with a better understanding of what sewage treatment plants are doing, you may have some thoughts on how you can manage your waste. And just like I encouraged you to have them come take a tour, I would actually encourage you all to go take a tour of your sewage treatment plant. I think a lot of us, you know, just citizens in general should have a better understanding of how our waste gets treated. We tend to think of, you know, we flush it and then it's gone and magic happens and now it's clean again. But, you know, of course that's not the case. So I would encourage you all to go take a tour of your local sewage treatment plant. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. They're, you know, they are, they're using biology to do this work in a lot of ways, how distillers and brewers are. So it can be a collaborative, and it should be a collaborative relationship, and communication is where that starts. So that, honestly, that's my presentation. So I think we have time now for some questions. I think Caleb's probably going to take this back over.
Oh, how well versed you are in this topic, and it just shows with your presentation. I had a couple questions that came in. Let me pull these up real quick. It says, how do you know if your organization requires pretreatment?
If pretreatment, sorry, did I mute myself or am I talking now? Okay, sorry about that. If pretreatment is required, the city should have reached out to you already. There are oftentimes pretreatment is not required by federal or state law at breweries. There are a few kind of benchmarks that establish whether or not pretreatment is required. The biggest one is whether or not your industry falls under one of about 100 different federal categories. Breweries, distilleries, and wineries, there is no federal category for that, so it's not required that way. The other two kind of benchmarks have to do with how, with the potential impact. So if you have 25,000 gallons per day or more of process waste, so this doesn't include like you know, your toilets, any safety showers, if you have a tap house, a tap room on site, tasting room, it's not going to include waste from that. This is just process waste. It is required to be part of the pretreatment program, and it's required to be permitted, but that doesn't mean that treatment is required. And then the other benchmarks are if you have 5% or more of the receiving sewer plant's capacity for treatment, whether that's hydraulic, so flow, or whether that's treatment of any individual pollutant. So BOD shouldn't see too much ammonia, but you know, if you discharge ammonia, if you discharge 5% or more of their treatment capacity for that pollutant, you're required again to be permitted, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're required to have treatment. So then if you have a permit, if you sample your waste and it comes in and all your numbers are below what those values are in the permit, you may not need treatment. If it's above that, you might. So talked about solids, TSS, total suspended solids, tends to be something that we see in a limit in pretreatment permits. If you tend to just dump all of your spent grain down the drain, you may need to look at, screening or some other method to remove that waste because you may have too much TSS. So that's a long way of saying you should know because the city should have told you. That's really what it comes down to. If they haven't, that's where we as pretreatment inspectors, we would tell the city they need to reach out to you all and determine whether or not you need a permit and whether or not you need treatment. So hopefully that answered the question and didn't just muddy the water. I'm happy to clarify if I need to.
Great, that was a good question. I wanted to just jump in to ask an additional question to that, Jordan. As an example, and I don't know if this is true or not, so I'm actually just genuinely curious as well. Say, a lot of producers use caustics and acids for their cleaning operations. If they're having a pH issue, would it be possible to maybe hold back before discharging maybe an acid or a caustic and blending those two byproducts to maybe neutralize some of their pH and balance it out before they discharge it?
I'm not necessarily going to recommend blending chemicals. Obviously, look at the SDS. Sometimes blending caustics and acids can produce, dangerous byproducts. So it's going to depend on what those acids and alkali materials are. However, yes, I mean, either discharging it slowly or neutralizing it, obviously can be a solution. I'm not going to blanket recommend that, just to, it's going to depend on those chemicals. But let's see, I think there is a federal prohibition of discharge of pH below, it's 5, and that should be implemented in the city's sewer use ordinance. Usually there's going to be enough water going out that your pH is going to be diluted and neutralized a little bit anyway. But that's a good question. That's certainly something to be aware of if you need to dump a lot of acid or a lot of high pH basic material. That you may need to consider some kind of neutralization. I do know of one brewery in Nashville in particular that they actually have a neutralization system on site because they use enough cleaning and have enough cleaning cycles that their discharge would have been too low, and so they do neutralize that acid before it goes out into the sewer.
Great, thank you.
Question. It says if you need to discharge something you normally don't, for example, like bad batch of beer, do I need to contact the treatment plant first?
I would absolutely recommend that, especially if you haven't already established a rapport with them and you don't know, you don't have a kind of a process or procedure to do that. Reach out to them, find out, because it may be that it's fine and you can just go ahead and dump it depending on the quantity. But they may ask you to open the valve only part of the way so that it goes, comes to them more slowly. So yeah, I would absolutely recommend at least the first time, reach out to them, find out what they need. They may say, here's what we recommend, and then you don't have to contact them ever again because you know what the process is. You've got your SOP worked out, and you follow that every time, and everything's fine. But most definitely, reach out and find out what they need and what you need to do to protect everyone.
Awesome, Jordan. Thank you so much for taking time to really just let us know about the ins and outs of wastewater management, especially specifically for spirits producers. I don't see any more questions at this time, but if if you're having lunch later or you're laying in bed tonight and you're like, man, I wish I would have asked that question, please reach out to us. I know that Jordan would be happy to answer any other questions later on. And if Everyone will be receiving a follow-up email that will have the recording link to this webinar, the presentation, and then from that email, feel free to send any of those questions that you guys didn't get to ask. Mark also just put in to the chat our Tennessee Sustainable Spirits website, so check that out if you haven't already done it. There's lots of resources on there, past webinars, things like that. But I just wanted to go ahead and once again thank Jordan, you and Mark both for taking time to present to our audience. I also like to thank everyone that registered and was a part of the webinar audience. Like I said before, I think there's such a benefit to having a live webinar, a live presentation, so that questions can be asked. There's real-time answering of those questions. But if you have any other questions, or have a facility that you think would be a good partner in our Tennessee Sustainable Spirits program, feel free to contact Mark. His email is mark.valencia@tn.gov. He'll be sending out the follow-up, so you'll have his email. Everyone that registered and attended will be, and he also just put it in the chat, so there it is for you. But other than that, I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. And like I said, if you have any other questions, feel free to send those to us. Thanks for attending.